Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldron. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday. It's Tuesday, it's Thursday, it's Wednesday, it's any day you like. As a matter of fact, today's a rerun. Goodbye. I'm taking the day off. It's Thursday, August 3rd, 2017. Up late last night working with anybody who'd work with me last night. Arliss Bunny gave me a hand late at night trying to get things straightened out. I wouldn't say we've solved our audio problems. I'd say we dominated. I would say we've got a working patchwork of audio apps today. I think just like the last series of apps. I mean, I got used to them, so I considered them to have worked well, but they had their problems too, and I got used to, without thinking about it, opening my apps in a certain order and getting everything routine. And things worked so long as I followed the routine. And I think I just needed to find the routine here, too. There's a weird interference between the apps, and that's always been the case. But if you open things just right, it reminds me of the scenes from Apollo 13, where they're testing things in the capsule. And if you turn certain things on in the wrong order, everything explodes. But if you turn it on in just the right order, everything actually works. And I think that's kind of what we're dealing with. So I think everything will work. I gave it a little test run with the Skype test call. I got rid of the echo that was bothering us. So fingers crossed this will work. I have perhaps one more trick up my sleeve if for some reason it shouldn't work. Arliss Bunny, in her experience, was saying in preparing her podcast that it sometimes actually matters right down to the level of who calls whom. I think that would be right. On Skype in order to get the recording going. It's been her experience that the person who is recording needs to originate the calls, which is backwards from the way we do it, but we also experimented with the way we do it last night after getting the procedure down, and it worked. So I'm hopeful that everything will work. I'm hopeful that we'll hear from Greg. It's possible that we'll get a chance to hear from Joan. Up so late that I didn't even really get to nail that part down. But I'm up so late that I saw all the news. I'm just too tired to report it. So anyway, we'll catch up with things. I see right away, right off the bat this morning, designed to irritate or designed to be retweeted and clicked on. Anyway, the ABC News report about President Trump's upcoming first vacation. Let's put that aside for the moment, though, and cross our fingers and see if our Skype connection works now that Greg Dworkin is here. Good morning, Greg. Q.
I was tempted to not say anything for a few minutes just to see your reaction.
That would make for great radio. Me going, God damn it, unplugging everything.
Hey, I'm here.
Yes.
I can try it now. Let's try it again.
Okay. Why don't, how many vacations are you going to take this year? I don't know.
As many as I possibly can.
Yeah. You're just like Trump. That's good.
Yeah, but I don't play golf.
No? Well, you should take it up. And you can take it up during the ensuing silence when you now have nothing to say. I'm very glad this is working. I think I've got the procedure down. It's real. I really have to write it down for myself because I started up in the right order this morning, but I still didn't.
Did you remember to put a quarter in the back?
That could be
probably what the problem was.
Maybe that's it.
You're out of coins.
Yeah. I have no idea. Although I think it also required changing some settings behind the scenes, so I don't know. I think everything is relatively stable. We might as well just get this out of the way now, and then we get all the information across. Then if things explode later in this show, I don't know what to do. But, well, we can reboot. Anyway, I'm glad it's working. Glad to hear from you again.
I wrote a note to myself. Please don't forget to unmute the mute button. If this happens, you'll drive David nuts.
I know. It's going to be several days until I feel confident that it's working in a stable way, and then I've got the procedures down right. And then, of course, we're going to throw another monkey wrench in it sometime soon. We're not going to roll out the station breaks just yet. We're going to wait until at least Monday. I'll tell everybody about all of that stuff. And then, of course, then it will be my turn to actually take a vacation. And I'm going to have to figure out how to engineer things such that even pre-recorded shows will have station breaks in them. Anyway, enough of my problems.
Let's start with some tweets here.
Yes.
Here's an important one. It's from Donald J. Trump. You may have heard of him.
He is leaving on vacation, I believe.
Yeah, and because he's never working, I just thought I'd remind you who he is.
All right.
It says, our relationship with Russia is at an all-time low.
It is?
Actually, he says all-time and very dangerous low.
Why did he do that?
You can thank Congress, the same people that can't even give us health care. As many people have pointed out, obviously, he doesn't know anything about the Cuban Missile Crisis or the Cold War. But the point of it all is here is John Kelly, the grown-up in the room who's got total control over everything, or as Cable likes to say, the new sheriff in town. And what's Trump doing? He's tweeting stupid things and blaming America first the very next morning.
By the way, we put the old sheriff in jail over the weekend. Sheriff Joe Arpaio is guilty. We never mentioned that.
When is the pardon coming?
Well, as soon as he figures out he can do it.
So that, when it comes to his family, he knows how to do it.
Yeah. Well, he's been checking that out. I don't know if he can, I don't know what, I forget what charges Arpaio was up on, whether they're state or federal, but I assume he leaves him in prison for now.
I suppose. So, a couple of things here. I mean, there's some important polls that came out yesterday. I want to go over those. And the white nationalism immigration policy. I want to go over that as well.
All right.
But then there's healthcare. I might do this one first just to get it out of the way. It's at the very bottom of your list.
Okay, let's take a look. Wait, where's my list?
It's on Skype.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking. The new Skype kind of hides it from me. Here we go. I think I have to click on. That's it. There it is.
Yeah, click on your name and then go all the way down to the bottom. And this is from the New Republic, and it says, "Where are the single-payer wonks?" The political momentum on the left for Medicare for All is gaining steam, but the policy is lagging behind. And it mentions, Bernie's going to be introducing another bill, and the hope, of course, is it's going to be substantive and not just symbolic, the way John Conyers' Medicare for All bill is symbolic.
Yes.
But here's the two paragraphs. It's hard to deny that single-payer is an area where progressive politics has outstripped policy. Conyers' bill is largely seen as a symbolic piece of legislation, not only because Democrats would first have to win back Congress and the White House to even begin passing it. As Josh Holland wrote on Wednesday in The Nation, the momentum for single-payer is tempered by the fact that the activist left, which has a ton of energy at the moment, has for the most part failed to grapple with the difficulties of transitioning to a single-payer system.
Okay.
Now, I've had some long-running discussions / arguments with folks over the last few days about this on Twitter. Usually when somebody writes, it's easy, you just do X. Anytime anybody says healthcare is easy, you just do X, means you don't really understand what's going on.
Well, Donald Trump says that.
I know. And there's nothing easy about this. Everything is trade-offs. So no, it's not easy. Yeah, but it would decrease the administrative costs by 5%. It would. But it would also mean raising taxes to pay for it. And, well, in the end, people would pay less. Maybe, but it would also increase taxes. It would change the system. It would cost jobs. It would do away with employer sponsored insurance, otherwise known as ESI. These are big changes. You can't just do with the wave of a pen and say, don't worry about it. We'll deal with it next week. So that's what they mean. And then they go on to say, we've seen this dynamic play out in real time in California, where the country's most promising single-payer bill foundered on the details of the legislation. And on a national level, there's little clarity around an actual plan with comprehensive steps to genuine universal coverage, which, by the way, is the goal, not single-payer. For a party that prides itself on being the country's only rational empirical party, where are the Democrats' famed wonks on single-payer? And to cut to the chase, it's just not there yet. Harold Pollack, who I love to follow on Twitter, one of the nicest guys in the world, the University of Chicago, health policy researcher, says there's not yet been a detailed single-payer bill that's laid out the transitional issues about how to get from here to there. We've never actually seen that. Even if you believe everything people say about the cost savings that would result, there's still so many detailed questions about how we should finance this, how we can deal with the shock to the system, and so on.
Okay.
This is why you transition to things. This is why things are done incrementally, not because people are scared or they have no backbone or they have no balls or whatever, however you want to say it, or ovaries, whatever. Instead of all the stupid charges, the fact of the matter is people have to sit down and work this through, and it takes time. And it will happen. Now that single payer and Medicare for all and things like that are politically acceptable in terms of stating it.
Yes.
Adriana McIntyre, one of the health policy folks on Twitter, makes the point it's an Overton window thing. Once you start talking about it as actual policy, the policy shops then are sort of given a permission structure in order to try to look at it. I mean, you're not going to, if your proposal is everybody gets healthcare free, that's my proposal. Nobody's going to do a serious, how do you do this thing, because it's just out there too far. But if everybody's talking about Medicare for all, that means people are going to sit down and actually look at it and figure out where things are going. Now, there's things that, have to be included in your thought process. For example, Medicare itself doesn't cover all of the costs of what it takes to cover the health bills that you're going to get. It covers about 74% of them. And that's why there's Medicare Advantage and gap coverage and the old donut hole and all the other stuff that people used to talk about. And it turns out that Affordable Care Act, Silver Plan, some of them actually pay more. And, of course, Medicaid pays 100%. So when you talk about, what kind of coverage, are you talking about Medicare for all? Are you talking about Medicaid for all? That is problems for the providers because it pays a lot less. But what are we talking about? And are we talking about universal coverage? Are we talking about a mix like other countries do? All this stuff has, these are not arguments to not do it. They're arguments to do the work first.
Yes. Well, I can see that. And everyone should remember that. That's the best thing you can remind people of. It's not arguments not to do it. It's a list of the challenges you face when you do.
Exactly right.
How about that for sunny
I think it's really vital to really understand that. And, don't just tell me, it's easy. You already lost me as soon as you said that.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's not easy.
No. And you'd be extraordinarily foolish after Trump's healthcare debacle to ape his line.
Exactly. He just showed you why it's not true.
Yeah. So, okay, that's an easy enough thing, and some people have said it would be easy.
It's not true, but he just showed you.
Yes. Luckily, you're not famous. You can back away from that statement. Even if somebody dredges it up on Twitter, I found where you said it would be easy. You can say, I've come to my senses, and I see it would be a challenge, but I'm up to that challenge.
You don't say I've come to my senses. You say, you know what? This was the long-awaited pivot, and this is the day I have become a health policy wonk.
That's it. That's a better way of doing it. Okay. See, we gamed it out. I thought it would be so easy to tell you what to say. It's more complicated than that.
It really is. So let's talk polls. The Quinnipiac poll came out yesterday, and everybody's talking about it. Yes. And I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics average right in front of me.
I'm sorry.
I sent that to you. I think you can find it pretty easily on the list there. Because the icon's really distinctive, the red and white one.
All right, I'll scroll around and look for a red and white thing. There it is.
There it is. See? 38.4% approval for Trump, which is a pretty much a low, and 56.9% disapprove. Remember, this is the aggregate. But with Quinnipiac, it happened to be 61% disapprove, 33% approve. It's the lowest approval of any of the polls, but it's not the highest disapproval. That comes from Rasmussen. What? 62% of people disapprove of Donald Trump and his performance. But the Quinnipiac poll, I think, is illustrative for a lot of different reasons. And by the way, 538 kind of says the same thing. Trump's at 37 in the aggregate. The Quinnipiac poll, Trump drops to new low, close to 2-1 disapproval. And 71% say the president is not level-headed.
Well, yeah. Also, you can't tell whether his head is flat underneath that poof anyway.
Exactly. 62 to 34% say he is not honest. More on that in a minute.
Yes.
63 to 34% say he doesn't have the good leadership skills. 59 to 39 says he doesn't care about average Americans. 58-39 say he's a strong person. And 55-42 say he's intelligent. So they'll give him that. He's intelligent and strong. But 63 to 34 say he doesn't share their values. That 34% that say he does is probably his floor at the moment.
Okay.
But at the moment. But some of the remarkable things in the poll here, if you actually drill down the numbers, and I did give you the actual PDF Quinnipiac poll there in there as well.
Oh, okay.
Here are some remarkable things. Okay. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling his job as president? Democrats, 96% disapprove.
Oh, yes, well.
2% approve. So we got work to do with that 2%. Republicans, 76% approve. It's under 80.
That's not good.
No, it's not good.
I mean, from his perspective.
Right. And what's interesting is if you look at white men, approve strongly is 33 and disapprove strongly is 41. White women, 20% approve strongly and 59% disapprove strongly. These are whites.
Okay.
Okay. And I have a little tweet here. It's labeled Rosie Rifka. She's the one that sent it out that I tweeted. So that's in there in the list too. But the polls show that 43% of non-college white Americans say they approve of Trump and 50% say they disapprove. So he's underwater with non-college whites for the first time in this poll.
Okay. It's like they went to college.
The idea that things don't ever change just isn't true. And among Trump voters, he's lost like 20 points in strongly approve, according to the YouGov poll from Huffington Post that was also published yesterday. So there's a lot out there showing that Trump's support is eroding, and therefore it is no coincidence and it's no surprise that things are leaked that maybe the Justice Department will look at affirmative action and try to get rid of it. Or
yes.
that he's got an immigration policy which is promoted by a white supremacist on TV yesterday, yes. Stephen Miller, who gets into a fight with Jim Acosta. His own family, Acosta's, is from Cuba, and makes a show out of touting what, in effect, is a policy that might appeal to that base that he's losing, but isn't going to go anywhere in Congress because Lindsey Graham and the rural agricultural Republicans are never going to go for it because it's going to impede growth.
So they say. It'll impede growth at Mar-a-Lago. I can tell you that.
Yeah, as an example. But Lindsey Graham and others just said basically, this doesn't have 50 votes. This is dead. You're going to get 30 votes on this. Not happening.
Okay.
And why would they push something that they know isn't going to work after having just done healthcare, which didn't work? And the answer is they're trying to shore up their base because that's all they got.
I guess so. Yeah, that is a big consideration now. Every time they consider undertaking a new initiative, if there's any doubt that it can pass, then they'll end up embarrassing themselves. They're going to be
then what they do is they get John Hannity and Ann Coulter in the White House to talk about how to make sure that the base is understanding that what they're doing is doing for them.
Yeah, minus the whole agriculture thing.
Right. Well, look, healthcare wasn't for them. The idea is to pretend it was. And that's the other thing. Remember, we talked about honesty. I saw a fascinating, believe it or not, fascinating, Ripley's Believe It or Not, fascinating show on Meet the Press afternoon show, weekly show yesterday with Chuck Todd.
I saw you
and
talking about
Steve Schmidt. He had David Folkenflik. And basically, the first 25 minutes of the show were trying to deal with the incredible lack of credibility for this White House. And Chuck Todd actually, a year and a half, 2 years too late, comes to the conclusion that, Steve Schmidt was the one that said it, and Todd couldn't deny it. You have to assume these guys are not telling the truth as your default.
Yes. It's about time. I saw your discussion of it.
Exactly.
I hope it takes root as a real policy. It's difficult to believe that they're really going to remember every day to exercise. But it is a big shift.
They didn't learn that 6 months ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know why. It's a huge thing. Their whole world is built on the people that they talk to being credible sources for what's happening in Washington, and the fact that they're not now.
Well, this whole Boy Scout thing helped.
Yes. Although, you mean how great
they're saying that, what about the fact that Trump claimed in this Wall Street Journal interview that was published not by the Wall Street Journal because it made it look bad, but what about this transcript that says that Trump claims that the head of the Boy Scouts called him and said it was a great speech, and then it turns out that didn't really happen? Isn't that a lie? And Huckabee Sanders says, well, that's a bold statement.
I wouldn't call it a lie. I wouldn't say that, or I wouldn't call it. I know you wouldn't say that. You're a spokesperson. The
right, but in fact, it was a complete, total, ball-faced lie that had absolutely no basis. In fact, you made it up. That's what we call, and you did it on purpose. That's what we call a lie.
Yeah, and so it wasn't the only one.
There's a number of those in the last week, and so the press is finally getting to the point where it's saying, look, it's not fair to call something a lie because you don't know what their motives are. But in this particular case, we got a whole slew of things that are just like flat-out lies.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he does set himself up for these things that are empirically provable. Although, I mean, right now, I believe the White House is in the middle of claiming that the lack of evidence is some kind of conspiracy or whatever. But he now says, well, okay, he didn't call me, and it wasn't the head of the Boy Scouts, but it was another Boy Scout official, several of them, and they spoke to me personally. They told me backstage after the speech it was the greatest, and I was just confused. But that's not even the only example from the week.
Right.
Or the day.
Exactly. Or the day. Jeremy Peters' article, Trump keeps his conservative movement allies closest, and he talks about how he's stroking them. And then there's another piece in Axios here, which I think is also important. Chaos, my favorite word describing them,
yes.
As you know. Chaos obscures Washington's biggest policy change, and that is to say on the environment and climate, where they've been fairly successful in gutting what Obama has done, but there's so much controversy about everything else, it's a distraction from actually seeing what they're doing.
Yes, and our environmentalists are saying, yes, thank you, finally, for pointing that out.
Yeah, and it's not a distraction, it's all part of the big picture. It just happens to be one of the only two things, and the other would be, playing to the base, that the Trump administration has done competently. It's the only two things, unfortunately. Everything else, not so much. Here's an interesting tweet from Mike Cernovich, who himself is a right-wing nutcase.
Nazi.
Rich Higgins, Ezra Cohen, Derek Harvey, Robin Townley, Adam Lovinger, all pro-Trump guys fired from NSC. So they're going after McMaster. In fact, it's likely that moving Kelly to chief of staff empowered McMaster to do this. Otherwise, McMaster himself probably would have left.
His generals.
Yeah.
Well, they stick together, maybe.
Right.
It's a good
thing.
So
bit of a split there, but it's just interesting to track that.
Yeah, it is. There was a lot of complaining about that. Did we mention the Ezra that they have? Who is his name? He's got a hyphenated name.
Yeah, he's out.
Ezra Warwick Dion. I don't remember what it was. But
yeah.
he's gone too.
They've been trying to fire him for since he's been there. And so, obviously the things to watch, how effective is Kelly really? Let's see if Seb Gorka's still there.
That's true. That's the benchmark.
Stephen Miller's still there. He was just on TV.
Yes. He'll be hard
still
to
there. So until those things happen, don't tell me about how effective he is.
Yeah. Gorka will be, he's the hole in the dam, the dike.
Well, he's the obvious one to leave because he's not competent, and he's really is a Nazi.
Yeah.
But, Miller and Bannon, as long as they're still there, not that much has changed. The other side of the coin is that tweet that I started with to read to you in terms of, yelling at America rather than yelling at Trump.
Yes. Okay. I heard that phone loud and clear. That's good.
That's good. The idea that Trump would tweet that this morning under Kelly's watch,
means
that not that much has changed.
Right.
He didn't take his phone away.
That's basically it. We should talk about the limitations at some point of the Kelly crackdown. Ultimately,
Right,
Trump
that's why
is
I was
just not
making fun.
controlling.
Well, the new sheriff. It's not a pivot, and he didn't suddenly become president, and Kelly isn't de facto president, and Trump is still the same. So just knock it off.
Yeah. We'll expand on that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'll give him credit when Bannon's fired. Till then, no.
Oh, okay. That seems like a good benchmark.
On the other hand, yesterday we didn't have a chance to talk about this. I mean, I was talking about it, but you couldn't hear it. On the pundit roundup, we talked about how Trump is taking a darker turn, and we talked about the Ron Brownstein article. I know you talked about that a little bit on the show. Trump gambles on cultural frustration over economic self-interest. We're talking about that here.
Right. Okay.
But other articles along those lines. Elliot Cohen in The Atlantic, The Downsides of John Kelly's Ascension. It's not a signal that the president is preparing to moderate the White House. It's a signal he's going to the mattresses, basically because Kelly follows orders. Okay. Kelly's not going to organize goon squads for Trump, but the president would probably not mind if he did. More to the point, Kelly's selection and that of a foul-mouthed financier from New York as Trump's communications director, even though the mooch didn't last longer than, as they say, the milk in my refrigerator, tells us not that Trump is planning on moderating his behavior, but rather on going to the mattresses. He may just have picked the wrong guy for that mission, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
In other words, he picked Kelly because he liked what Kelly did at DHS. And what did Kelly do at DHS? Follow orders.
That's true. He was a compliant deporter.
Yeah, not so good. Now, here's an interesting thing that YouGov was pointing out, and this is all in the pundit roundup. This is in regard to some YouGov polling about Brexit and Leave voters in Britain.
Nobody says Britain.
And I bring it up because of culture anxiety outweighing economic anxiety.
Oh, yes, okay.
Right? 61% of Leave voters who voted Leave, say significant economic damage would be a price worth paying for bringing Britain out of the EU. 39% of Leave voters also say themselves or family members losing their jobs is a price well worth paying.
Why?
Because cultural anxiety.
Okay. Yeah, I mean...
Get rid of polls, because you got to get rid, not P-O-L-L-S, it's capital P-O-L-E-S. Because you got to get rid of, all those Europeans that are coming to take our jobs.
But if you lose your job, what's the difference?
I'd say it was rational.
Yeah. Oh.
Just it's a good example of cultural anxiety being the more important factor.
I do. It's hard to keep in mind that you're dealing with irrational people. That's not the default setting.
Yeah, they call it Brexit extremism among Leave voters, and that's true. So you have a hardcore group of people, which makes, of course, governing extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And just raises the overall big question that I'll leave you with for this part of the segment, and that is that as much as you dislike people like Jeff Flake, who is certainly a hardcore conservative and votes all the wrong ways, and yet writes books about how the Republican Party has to come back to their conservative roots and how Trump has lost the way. And you go back to people like William F. Buckley, who in effect threw out the John Birchers from the conservative movement back in the day. Dislike Buckley's anti-Semitism, and you can dislike other things about Buckley, but yeah, he did that. So did Goldwater. And so to endorse their throwing folks like that out isn't to endorse, all of a sudden now I'm a Goldwater boy. But nonetheless, you have to recognize good things when they happen, and that's one of the good things that did happen. So when Flake proposes it now, you have to see it in that conservative context, in that whole history of conservatism. And in England, obviously, they haven't gotten rid of their radicals. They've invited them in, and this is what happens. And in America, in effect, we've done the same. And so the Republican Party, as it becomes the Trump Party, is essentially telling the Birchers, the guys who think that fluoridation is evil and a communist plot and precious bodily fluids and Dr. Strangelove and all that sort of stuff. You've invited them not only to be, have a seat at the table, but you now own the restaurant.
This is troubling, to say the least. It was a good illustration.
The pushback, I think, is good. How can you support what Flake does? Because he like votes 100% of the time for Trump. That's not the point. The point is pushing that back. I don't expect him to become a Democrat. He's a conservative Republican. He's always going to vote that way. Yes. He's voting on Republican policy. That's not the point. I get that. I'm going to oppose it, but that's not in and of itself inherently evil the way inviting the Birches to the table is.
That is true. And ultimately, I just settled on the message of, well, this is not really necessarily aimed at me, and it's no wonder I'm not receptive to his message. But to the point of distilling out what that message actually is, that the Republican Party needs to return to a at least near mainstream-ish, or what we can now call mainstream-ish version of conservatism. It ought to be welcome. He would not be happy about another president who gets up there and says, I can fly, and somebody said I was the greatest, and I've never spoken to that person. He's limited to things that are verifiable. Oh, someone's here. Maybe Jeff Flake campaigning, ringing the doorbell.
You never know. Well, the bottom line to me there, though, is, look, Charlie Dent on the Republican side in the House, the Tuesday Group guy, is a Republican, relatively conservative Republican. He can call himself a moderate, but that's still center-right. And he's not going to vote on issues the way I like most of the time. But I'd still rather work with him than Mark Meadows. I'd rather him be, Speaker than Mark Meadows. Okay. And so, when you're looking at it from that perspective and that point of view, that doesn't mean that I'm endorsing Flake for re-election. I'm just glad he did what he did, and I hope more people think that. And apparently what people say is that in private they do, but they're just scared of Trump, and so they're not going to say it publicly. Well, if more people say it, maybe they won't be so scared of him.
Maybe.
And in that regard, I've seen a lot of the conservatives and the Republicans say, well, Flake, and whether or not he gets primaried, by a Tarkanian or whatever, that would be, what happens to Heller in Nevada, but somebody like that. Whether he gets primaried or not and whether he wins that primary, is really going to tell the Republican Party in a big way, are they allowed to, voice their actual opinion?
Yeah, well, that's...
But you don't have to win or lose the primary. You have to just see how the whole thing develops. You'll know weeks beforehand, months beforehand, how this is developing.
All right. Well, willing to watch it play out. I'm not gonna silence Jeff Flake, and he wouldn't listen to me anyway. But
right.
I also won't listen to him.
So to me, that's how you have to take that whole piece that he's done in context. He's done excerpts. He's written a book, so on and so forth, and it's all kind of relevant.
Okay. I'm willing to let it play out for a little while longer.
Yep, there you have it.
Jeff will be happy to know.
Right. Another piece here from the Pundit Roundup, Alex Shepard writing in TNR of the New Republic. Trump wants a culture war. Are Democrats ready to fight back? In the same week, Democrats dropped their better deal economic agenda. Trump made it clear he's banking on cultural issues. That was from a few days ago, and if it wasn't clear then, it's certainly clear now.
Yes.
And all of that actually has overtaken the whole thing about Donald Trump actually dictating Don Jr.'s statement. Yeah. Lying at the meeting, talking about lying and why you can't trust him. That's also part of the underlying you can't trust this White House at all.
Yes, and we're definitely having our zones flooded by this White House. A lot of things that would ordinarily be weeks-long scandals that get subsumed by the next complete outrage. And no outrage lasts extraordinarily long, I mean, except, I guess, Trump-Russia, because it's so comprehensive.
Be back in a sec.
Okay. Well, I'll go find out who's at the door. I'm going to go along with him. You should bring us with you. Now I'm curious. But yes, many outrages that we could point to, and I'll add a few. But as soon as you get back, I'll jump off of that list. But we didn't get around to actually mentioning the second call about which he lied in a single day, or at least it was reported in a single day.
What's that?
The Mexican president one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That,
who you can believe? The Mexican president, the Boy Scouts, your random, 3-card Monte guy in Times Square, or the president.
I don't
and
know.
The funny thing is, it's not the president.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a difficult, fight. My sons are terribly upset by the prospect of having to choose. It's easy to do given the actual circumstances, but having to choose as between the president of the United States and the president of the Boy Scouts of America who's telling the truth. Ordinarily, that would be a puzzle, and you'd say, well, it must be that the truth lies somewhere in between. But it's, well, let me remind you, the president's Donald Trump. Oh, well, okay.
Oh, yeah, then it's
that's
no
as
brainer,
clear-cut an issue as I can imagine. But, yeah, the president of the Boy Scouts called me and told me it was the greatest speech ever. No, I didn't. I didn't call you. I wouldn't say that. It's an embarrassment. Same day we find out the president of Mexico called me and told me our immigration policy is awesome. No, right. I didn't. I never would. And okay, well, they both told me in person. No, I never talked to you. You're a jerk. I hate your guts. Whatever.
So the last thing I'm going to leave you with is another chapter out of the 2016 primaries will never end. And the first one is a piece from Politico from a couple of days ago that made it into the pundit roundup. The blue dog map is changing. It may even help Democrats win Republican districts. An old story. Do you support blue dogs if that's the only Democrat that can win in a Georgia or an Alabama or a place like that? And what if they're not pro-choice? And the other side of the coin is some recent criticisms of Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and Deval Patrick, mostly for their Wall Street and big donor ties. And yes. Is that a deal breaker in terms of their own candidacy, let's say, for president in 2020? And if so, why? And at what level? And why were they okay until now, and now all of a sudden they're not okay? So I think that there's a lot that still has to be hashed out. We have plenty of time, and those are all reasonable questions to ask. Nobody's silencing anybody. These are questions that ought to be raised, but the answers aren't inherently obvious. It seems clear in retrospect that taking big money from Wall Street for things like speeches was difficult in terms of selling it to the public. Working for Wall Street, Deval Patrick, I think, is a managing partner at Bain Capital right now.
Yes.
Is going to be difficult, and there's no question about it. And you better have a good explanation, and if you want to be president, then you better start thinking about that explanation now.
Yes, I'm open to a good explanation.
Yeah, but you better have one.
Yes, that's true. And the political culture is changing. There will be things that people will begin to avoid because they want to avoid having that problem, and they plan to run for president, and slowly these things will, I hope, will begin to fall out of fashion, or at least it will come, either that or we'll all come to some mutually agreed upon cultural understanding about why it's okay. And I don't know whether I want that to happen, but it's the only other possibility. But yeah, there'll have to be some answers, and things that people evolve along with the cultural view of those things. There will be things that people did that they might say, yeah, given the current circumstances, no, I wouldn't have done it again, and not just because it's going to get in my way now, but because I've come to change my view of how these things operate. At the time, it felt very different, and then we began to see how malignant some of this stuff can really be.
Which is fine. And I think that that's all incredibly reasonable. What's unreasonable is they were acceptable, but now they're not because they're rivals of Bernie.
Well, there'll always be some of that. David Dayen has been pretty clear, and I think I'll have to catch up on exactly what he's saying, but he's offered not exactly what I would call a defense of Kamala Harris, but certainly an explanation and a clarification of what her role really was. And it seems like he's coming down on the side of to the extent that the mortgage scam crisis was being used as leverage against her. I mean, I don't think anybody knows that story better than he does, and he seems to be taking the position that there's only a certain amount of criticism that's fair for her on this, and that she's not the devil she's being portrayed as on this issue, except in the minds of people who are interested in pushing her aside as a rival to, let's say, possibly Bernie Sanders.
Right.
So that's interesting. So keep
anyway,
that in mind.
It's still early. There's plenty of room and plenty of time to explore all of those things, and I'm not objecting to the exploration, just trying to keep it real and keep it reasonable.
Yes.
And with that, I will leave you for today. That's my segment.
All right.
But this is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning, and in this particular case, he's actually listening. Couldn't listen yesterday.
Right.
But today, yes. So hopefully things will stay fixed, and
Hope so.
I will be back on Monday.
Okay, we'll do it again and try and
again.
keep everything hammered out just right. And I'll practice a bunch and see if I can get the whole procedure down and cross fingers that it continues to work. Thanks,
Right.
Greg.
You're welcome. I'm gonna, as I leave, I'm gonna find this piece talking about the Harris Deval Patrick thing and just drop it at the end there if you want to take a look at it, or at least Scott Anderson can when he sums up the show. Take care, and I'll talk to you Monday.
Thanks very much. Okay, take care. And well, let's see. It occurs to me that I should probably reach out and see whether Joan is available and interested in coming on the radio today. Armando says he's doing nothing this morning and wondered if I might want to talk about that. Sure, come and talk. Yeah, I assume that means you want to talk about something in particular. Let's make sure that we can have that happen. That'll also give me a chance to reach out and see if Joan is going to be available or maybe is busy today. And let's say come on in, Armando, and there's plenty to talk about, and I bet some of it is the same. And to the extent that we don't get to some of these other background stories, maybe so much the better, because I can save those stories for pre-recording some shows while I am away on breaks. Oh, okay. Joan says she'll check in a bit. That's the little beepy noise there. I haven't figured out how to eliminate that one. But Joan knows that the easiest way to reach us is via Twitter. By the way, I should say this while we're waiting here for Joan to come by. I wanted to mention I got a nice call from the folks at our Rochester station who've agreed to carry us on their air, and just had some suggestions, and some of them are more easily doable than others. One of the shortcomings of doing the show in the way we do it and the way we've engineered it. It is a shortcoming, although sometimes these things can be overwhelming. I do wish we had more channels available for more easy input from the audience. So there's a lot of discussion about the possibility of having open phone lines and taking phone calls, just traditional talk radio sort of thing. And we did experiment with that early on, and there was some fantastic engineering that went into making it possible for internet radio to take regular telephone calls and to have a system that would keep people on hold if necessary, and allow for screening if you happen to have a production staff, which we didn't have. But we don't have that available immediately. We can try and look for a new way. Our old solution no longer exists in the same form, and so it's awfully difficult to use that same software fix for it. But we do have, of course, open the Twitter channel, and even if you're not connected via Twitter and you've been thinking about it, that's a good excuse to do it. Use the hashtag, and if you're not connected with Twitter, then it'll take you a while to figure that out. But if you are a Twitter user, hashtag KITM for Kagro in the morning, just throw that into your tweet. We use it all the time. Lots of regular listeners will use it to suggest new directions for the show, stories, ask questions. I'm able to address them, but getting calls on the air on internet radio presents something of a challenge. We'll continue to work on it and see if there are other solutions out there. I do have the ability to bring people in via Skype, which I can do from time to time, like I'm doing right now. Armando joins us. Let's see, what's on your mind these days?
Is something I have to call Marcos, because someone's offering us an app for telephone calls.
Oh, that is good. We need that.
It looks like it works pretty well.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we'll talk about that in the back.
Yeah. Well, that'll be good news for our folks in Rochester, who apparently are aching to be able to participate in the show, and why would we want to say no to that?
No, you absolutely would want. I think it'd be one of the great additions we could do. We have lots of smart listeners who bring things to our attention via Twitter, and I'm sure they'd have great things to say if you could get them on air.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be working on that, and a couple other requests, as I mentioned, we will probably be trying to engineer too, including station breaks. It does occur to me as they now tell us, we love having you on the air, but that's 2 hours that we don't get to tell any of our listeners what our radio station is called. Oh, yeah, that's a problem.
I guess we could build that in.
Yeah,
Our script.
We're going to work on that.
Thanks for listening to us on We Act and on Rochester.
Yeah, well, we got to straighten out where we are, and yeah, they definitely want to be able to do that. I think we can work it out. Anyway, you had something to
I have
bring
a
up
lot
today,
of things, but I'm actually kind of curious about your list of things that you were talking about. What are the issues that are off the radar? It just kind of occurred to me that I don't know. Maybe they're on the radar. Your list of things. Kind of curious what those are.
Oh, let's see. Well, initially I was, I certainly want to spend some.
Put you on the spot.
That's okay. I've got a ton.
I do have some questions for you.
But
some thoughts.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll collect them from you. But I guess I was astonished by yesterday's stories about how frequently the president was caught out yesterday making things up. I got a phone call from the Mexican president.
You saw the classic Joe Walsh tweet on that, right?
Oh no, I don't think I did.
Oh my gosh, you need to see the Joe Walsh tweet.
What did he say?
How do I get that to you? I'll paraphrase. It was sure. Obama was a liar and Trump's a liar and Clinton was a liar. But Trump is completely honest about his lying.
How so? Because he wants...
He's like, I'm lying to you. Here, let me lie to you. I guess what he's saying
he's not even doing that.
Bad liar that everybody knows he's lying. And he gets caught out in his lies all the time.
Maybe. I don't know.
That's a virtue, apparently.
Yeah, sure. Why not? If you're Joe Walsh,
find that tweet. It's the funniest tweet.
I'll have to take a look around. The thing that was bothering everybody yesterday was there are things that he lies about. Sure, politicians lie, but the press rarely likes to call it a lie because they recognize there's usually some nuance to it or some spin to it or some sense in which it is true, or they believed that this was the case at some point and maybe later I don't know, but it depends on the circumstances. But yeah, he lies about stuff that's like, what? Why? That doesn't even help you to say I called you. What do you need that for?
But those are just bald-faced lies. He says something happened and it did not.
Yes.
And there's only two possible explanations for it. You deliberately lied or you've lost your mind.
I've heard some other ones.
Both things are possible.
Yes, that's certainly true. But they've reached the level, for instance, about these speeches. One thing I noticed that was interesting. Daniel Dale, who culls so many of these crazy lies out of these things.
Toronto Star reporter, very good.
Yeah, and he does a great job every time. I can't understand why he continues to do these free-form interviews that get turned out as transcripts. I'm still trying to figure out the dynamics of the Wall Street Journal not releasing the transcript themselves but allowing others to. But
it wasn't a question of allowing.
Oh,
their reporters got upset.
Oh,
that they weren't releasing the entire transcript and they leaked it.
Oh,
that's what happened.
Well, that's good. That's an explanation. I didn't know exactly what happened there.
Gerard Baker, who is the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal, has made a name for himself as the prime mainstream respected media shill for Trump. I distinguish, say, Gerard Baker of the Wall Street Journal, whose news pages, which is not its opinion pages, which is run by ultra-conservative Paul Gigot, who was, they're terrible. I mean, they really were the original crazy conspiracy theories. The people don't remember this. In the Wall Street Journal editorial page was Arkansas Project crazy on Clinton.
Okay.
And they've always been a crazy editorial page. Absolutely nuts. I forget who the Bartley, or I think his name was the previous guy who ran that page. So they were crazy. I mean, they never reached InfoWars, but they came close. They were like Hannity is now.
Oh.
Like the Seth Rich story, they were Vince Foster in the 90s.
Yeah. That, I can't believe that ever had a respectable gloss.
The Wall Street Journal pretended that the Vince Foster suicide was a big scandal for the Clintons.
Yes.
So
okay.
It's not unprecedented. Now,
Seth
Rich obviously wasn't as high a figure, frankly. No offense to his family. He's probably just some kid working at the DNC. I mean, I'm not sure what exactly he was supposed to be able to have access to.
Yeah.
But anyway, I really don't want to go down the Seth Rich storyline. And I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, the Wall Street Journal transcript.
Right.
Gerard Baker's the new version of this, but the thing that's amazing about it is he is the editor of the news section of the Wall Street Journal. Before they kept it crazy on the opinion side, and they kept their very respectable. The Wall Street Journal still, by and large, does fairly good reporting. But now this Gerard Baker does this interview, which is, its full transcript is a complete embarrassment to not just Donald Trump. It's frankly an embarrassment to Gerard Baker, because as you saw how chummy he was and talking about Southampton and all the other things that they talked about, he didn't want to release the entire transcript because it was embarrassing to him. Sure, it was embarrassing to Trump, but I think the withholding was an embarrassment to Gerard Baker.
Maybe.
And some Wall Street Journal reporter said, that's not right. We should release this entire transcript, and if we're not going to do it, I'm going to leak it to Politico, who first ran it.
Okay. Well, I can get behind that. I kind of like that. Really, honestly, at this point, part of the discussion yesterday was there would be no point at all in conducting interviews like this unless the transcript was released. I talked about the sort of the trend in doing this.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is the full defense of the New York Times.
Yeah.
And the way they interview. Maggie Haberman isn't my favorite right now. I don't like her approach, but she does have an important skill in this era, which is, A, she gets to interview Trump. She's done it now 2 or 3 times. And she lets him talk.
Yes,
and
that's their defense.
Of course, she nods along and pretends she's agreeing with him and lets him go. And then they print the entire transcript.
Yeah. That's my thing. I vomited 5 times. I laughed in his face. In my imagination, where I conduct these interviews, I don't get through it, and so therefore I don't produce the transcript of crazy that arguably is rope to hang him with. But I'm not. I'm still not certain I buy it as a premise at this point, and I'm a little more swayed by the argument that there's now no longer any point to maintaining access to the president. If you want to document the crazy, he does it for you every day from 6 to 10 a.m. on Twitter.
I totally agree with that. I think that, in fact, the long-form interview with Trump is now something that's not ever going to happen again.
I thought it wouldn't happen after the first one, but then it's happened 5 times since. He thinks it's good.
Long.
Yeah.
I mean, if God forbid someone asked me to join Trump's administration in communications and I accepted, my first thing would be he can only be interviewed, and even this is a little dicey, by Fox and Friends.
Yeah.
Not even Hannity. He's got to be Fox and Friends.
I don't know why they allow it, but I assume that this actually, I think this has ties to other stories like the John Kelly story, the question of, will he impose the kind of discipline and turn things around and help the White House pivot? And always lurking in the background is Trump's sustained habit over decades of simply pushing aside whatever gatekeepers he once installed for his own safety, because he feels like talking about something with this or that person, and there's crumbs all over this trail.
He's got a complete Colonel Jessup complex.
Yes, right. He
absolutely wants to tell you he ordered the code red.
Yeah. That's one of the problems. At some point,
he's going to say, yeah, you're damn right we colluded. That's going to come.
Yes, and they're damn close to it at this point. But there's definitely a sense I think illustrated for instance, in the Donald Trump Jr. story and the meeting and the way that was handled and the way it's developed since, in which it's part Colonel Jessup, you're damn right we colluded, and I'm happy to tell you, and sort of another thought that Trump frequently has about these things, which is to say, not only was this done, it's okay to do. It was, and there's nothing wrong with it. And even if there is, I alone can talk my way out of it. I get to do it, and if for whatever stupid reason, liberals like you become convinced that it's wrong, I could talk you out of it. I can talk anybody out of anything. That's why I'm a successful billionaire, blah, blah, blah. You know, he just believes his own hype, even though there's every bit of evidence.
You saw the latest story, I assume,
Who knows?
in the Washington Post about the transcripts of his phone calls. They were from January with the Mexican president and the Australian prime minister.
Yeah, I see that one now, and I wasn't certain whether those were new conversations or what, but it's a new story.
The detail is new.
Okay.
In the sense that there's a transcript, so to speak, now. And I don't know how we got those. I haven't looked into those stories in detail.
Donald Trump leaked them.
But one line struck me that he apparently told the Australian prime minister. Well, there's two lines that struck me.
Okay.
The most.
There's one of them, I look like a dope.
That fits into the point you were making is, I am the greatest person in the world.
Yeah.
He said that to another person.
That is true. I did see that in passing. I did not understand the context of it, but who cares? In what context are you allowed to say that?
What context is that something you say?
A stand-up comedy, perhaps?
Yes, I mean, even if you think it, you're not the greatest person in the world if you say it, because that just kind of shows you're too stupid to be the greatest person in the world.
Yes, right. I mean, the people who would be perhaps entitled to say it would never consider it ever. I'm trying to think, like, Mother Teresa. She's not going to say it.
Muhammad Ali used to say it. But
yes, that's right. but he was.
But, you know,
he was the old "it's a joke"
boxer, you know.
Yeah,
and it was it was part of the show. I mean,
that is
who
true.
Knows if Ali thought he was the greatest? I assume he didn't. He was
maybe,
just selling tickets.
Arguably true. Now, look, in hindsight, was he the greatest boxer of all time? Okay, you got me. You may have me on that one. I'm not a boxing expert, but I'd buy it.
Oh, he was certainly amongst them. No
sure,
question about it.
I'm
he
not.
Was in the conversation.
So maybe it's you. Yeah, I don't know. All of these quotes. I mean, there's a graphic on the Washington Post's page on it that has just little clips of it. I mean, it's hilarious. Superimposed over a picture of him on the phone making his mutant mouth hole pose of the day. Is let's see, let's see, what else is up? I'll read you all the ones that are up there. There's only maybe a dozen quotes, some worse than others. This is going to kill me. He's talking to the Mexican president. The Mexican president has just told him, we're not paying for the wall, you're an idiot. And he says, this is going to kill me, this puts me in a bad position, as though the Mexican president was going to say, well, okay then, it puts you in a bad position, huh? I'll have to help you. Oh, I think I've got some auto playing video. Where are you? I don't even know.
I don't hear it, but that's...
Oh, okay. You know what? Maybe it's on the other computer. That must be why you can't hear it. Okay, I can hear it. Anyway, but this puts me in a bad position. It makes me look so bad, and I only... I haven't seen these yet. It makes me look so bad, and I have only been here a week. Let's see those.
Wow. Look how bad he looks now.
Yeah, you've been here 6 months and nothing has changed. Boy, that will make us look awfully bad. This deal will make me look terrible. By the way, how many times? It's limited vocabulary, yes, but me, look, me, look. This shows me to be a dope.
You said that?
Yeah, I'm like, you're right about that, sir.
It does, in fact, show you to be a dope.
I look like a dope. It is bad for me. Look at the vocabulary in this
and
guy.
I'm supposed to care how you look.
It is horrible for me. This is a killer. I'm going to get killed on this thing. And then, let's see, two more. I will be seen as a weak and ineffective leader in my first week. And, and it is embarrassing to me. It's a 2-minute and 56-second video that accompanies this. But those are, they're outlined. They're in red, white type over a red background, just plastered all over this picture of him looking befuddled on the phone. And
I love
great.
The Washington Post. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. Then there's also, I guess, some transcripts of his discussion with the Australian Prime Minister, the quote that people were grabbing was him complaining that my call with Putin was much more pleasant. This is crazy. Like, again,
Yes.
to which the Australian Prime Minister would say, I don't give a crap how your call with Putin. Well, I sort of do, in the sense that, oh my God, the leader of the free
Why are
world
you
is
having
in on
such a
with
great
Putin.
conversation with him?
But two, I'm like, yeah, I'm from Australia. He's from Russia. He's Putin. I'm somebody else. I don't even remember his name. Turnbull, right?
Turnbull.
And
Trumbull. One of
yeah,
the two.
it's Turnbull. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Malcolm Turnbull. Just double checking. I'm sorry, Australia. We love you. Fantastic.
That's right.
It
Good
turned
day.
out not to be a kangaroo out there in California the other day. Somebody, but it was a giant raccoon or something like that. I saw that tweeted around yesterday. Don't ask me what that was about. But what concern would he have with, I had another phone call about another topic with another person yesterday that was very nice. Oh, really? Was it the ice cream man? I don't care who you conversed with and had a good time with. We're having this conversation. Who gives a crap? Oh, wow. Well, I like Putin better than... Well, when Putin's the president of Australia, prime minister, you can call him there. But he's not. I am, and we're allies, and we have things to work on. Let's talk. I've talked to more pleasant people than you, too, but I didn't bring it up. But thank you for opening the door to that. You're the worst person I've ever spoken to. You're the worst person in the world. How about that?
He really is.
I got a phone call the other day from somebody who told me I was the best bad person ever.
that was me. I called him and told him that.
Yeah, by the way, I'm using that as an excuse for everything now. Anything I come up with that I think is true about the president, I just say the president of Mexico called me and told me that you were colluding with Russia.
Or the Boy Scouts.
Right, yeah. Well, no, they didn't. There's no way they would call you. They don't even know who you are. Well, details. We had a personal conversation. It wasn't the president.
You're the
of
most
Mexico.
honest liar I know.
Yeah, I'm upfront about it. I'm telling you, I'm lying about this to you right now. Okay.
Exactly.
Great. Yeah, lots of lies. More golf lies, too, as well.
Really?
The
the Golf Magazine one.
the Golf Magazine one is chock full of lies that we haven't even talked about yet, like the time that the president... the Golf Magazine and some other ones, Sports Illustrated, people who have played golf with the president a lot, and somebody has decided to round up reports on, okay, what kind of player is he really? The general consensus being he's a run-of-the-mill, average amateur cheater in the sense that, he does things that people do all the time in cheating in golf that aren't terrible, serious infractions. They are if you're scoring and playing for money, which, by the way, he's always betting on it. That's the real outrage, is he plays and he sets wagers and then he cheats and then he tries to collect on the bets. But cheating, like if you're a golfer, you're like, hey, improving the lie of your ball, you hit it in some deep grass, you take it out, hit it from the same spot, but with a better shot,
he
hitting the
improves his
ball,
lie, he does.
whatever,
Frankly,
taking a
I haven't
mulligan.
played in a while, but I certainly did all those things myself.
Sure.
So
if you want golf
I
to be
would
pleasant,
bet.
right? If you're betting, you can't do it. And the basic rule is if you want to do something that you think you're entitled to, you have to ask the other team, will you allow me to do this here? If they say, okay, fine. So, he'll pick up a putt that's 6 feet out and say, he gives himself gimmies. And you can't do that. He takes mulligans, which people sometimes do, but usually by agreement, maybe on the first tee. He takes them all over the place. He just drops the second ball if he duffs his shot. It hits another one. So this reporter is kind of recounting all of that. And at one point, he just tells the story that Trump calls him to brag about a score on a particularly difficult course someplace. He calls and says, I want you to tell everybody about my great round. I shot a 68 at, whatever. And right away, the reporter knows this guy doesn't shoot a 68 ever. But he doesn't print the story. He prints the rest of the story, but he doesn't put the 68 in it. And Trump calls him back later to berate him for not telling everybody he got a 68. This is the kind of guy we're dealing with.
He's never shot a 68 in his life. A 68's an incredible score. It's what the PGA Tour players shoot. He could shoot 68 on your local public links, which has no trees.
Yeah, maybe. He's a good golfer, but he's not that good. Anyway, that's not really a super important thing.
A good golfer shoots 80.
Yeah, a good amateur. Yeah. Right. Well, he's been claiming to be PGA caliber for a long time. I'm PGA caliber. Every once in a while, I hit one shot and say, "Wow, that is a good shot." And I suck.
He also
on the rest
claimed
of
to
them.
be dating Paula Bruni.
Right. That's
Carla
true.
Bruni,
right. And to not be John Barron. So, I mean, I guess how long has this been going on? In that sense, it's small potatoes. But I did saw some interesting explanations, by the way, of another theory of the Mexico call and the Boy Scouts thing. Some people, of course, saying, well, he's just making it up, he's a liar. Other people saying he's mentally ill, and it could be either or both. And there's convincing explanations for an actual, clinical mental illness in some of these cases. There's also, somebody said, what about the possibility that his staff knows that he's expecting feedback, but that it would be a disaster to let Trump actually speak to any of these leaders, and they are just dialing in through the White House telephone system and like putting on a Spanish accent, and pretending to be there. Hello, Mr. President. I wanted to call to tell you that you have the most fantastic immigration policy ever. You are the greatest president I have ever met in my life. Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senor President of Mexico is my name. Oh, well, thank you for calling me and telling me. You might be able to get away with that. I don't know who, you don't have to imitate anybody to be a Boy Scout leader, I guess. Call them up and say,
I don't know.
You gave the greatest speech ever. But it was interesting to see, I mentioned Daniel Dale earlier. He was actually caught by surprise by this. I don't know how you could miss it, but somebody else pointed out to him and he repeated, this is a pattern for Trump. He said that some people have told me that my speech to the joint session of Congress was the greatest speech ever delivered in that venue by a president. It wasn't a State of the Union, so he didn't make that mistake. And then later, people told me that my speech in Poland was the greatest speech ever delivered by a president on foreign soil. And now, the Boy Scouts, which doesn't really stand up to joint session of Congress, foreign speech by a president, but the Boy Scouts told me it was the greatest speech ever given to their organization. And it's 3 times that he's made this ludicrous claim about a speech, with the exception of the speech in Poland, which had been roundly condemned internationally.
And
the speech in Poland was just dismissed as adequate.
He was delivering it was a scam.
Yeah. But he 3 times has come up with the same explanation that somebody called me specifically. And then, of course, we find out, no, nobody ever called you. And the person named denies it. And they told me it was the greatest speech ever. And there's no chance in the world. Why in the world would anybody think that the speech to the Boy Scouts was the greatest speech the Boy Scouts had ever heard? First of all, no one's ever heard another speech to the Boy Scouts. So it's hard to compare. But what did you tell them? When I told them about my friend with the yacht, it's obvious. Who else would be able to tell a story like that? It's obviously the greatest. Like maybe somebody told somebody something about when they were a Boy Scout and it was relevant to these kids. That would be better. The guy who missed his speech and didn't get on his plane.
He told them stories about how he won Michigan. He told the Boy Scouts that.
Right. So it was, I don't know what else to say. It was clearly the worst speech ever given to the Boy Scouts because, find me another speech about which the president of the Boy Scouts of America had to print a public apology. And we'll talk. But I don't think they've ever had to apologize for another speech because nobody has been moronic enough to deliver that kind of content to Boy Scouts before. It's never occurred to anybody to tell them about my election victory plus also orgies, which I'm not going to go into but I did mention it. I just wanted to say we had a lot of fun. I'm not going to tell you how because you're Boy Scouts. So, I don't know. He's obviously, what else can you say? The guy's delusional. But what about the possibility that his staff is like, do you think they're saying that I got a call from a staffer for the president of Mexico, and he says, or something, and he just turns it into, I got a call. It was me. Because I'm great. I'm the best phone answerer ever. I don't know. I wanted to talk about it, but
he does get crazy calls from all kinds of crazy. Someone told me Roger Stone calls him. Maybe
True.
He says all these things to him.
Yeah. That could be. And he does have
called him.
He does have a habit of
things, someone, or it could be that imaginary friend who wouldn't go to Paris.
Yes, right, or any of those things. He always has got an imaginary friend. But I was trying to connect it before to the John Kelly story.
Sorry.
Which that's okay. I don't mind getting distracted. This is the essence of the show. But it occurs to me, people have pointed out, the long, decades-long habit of Donald Trump is even when he sets up a gatekeeper, when he gets in his head that he wants to talk to his friends, because they'll tell him dumb stuff like this, he just calls them. And, Kelly is going out of his way to set up a hierarchy in the White House that works the way it's supposed to. That if you're going to brief the president, you got to show me the materials first. That works to a certain extent with staff in the White House who are seeking to proactively seek out the president, get his attention, and pitch him on something. It doesn't work for this president, or maybe any president, but this president makes a habit of it, of his reaching out. He breaks out, and he'll corner somebody and say, tell me about something, or that. And, people will say, I didn't present the materials to you, Mr. Chief of Staff, because the president buttonholed me and asked me to tell him about it. And what was I supposed to do? I can't answer you.
On his cell phone.
Right. That's another thing he does.
Kelly
he reaches out and calls.
What's he going to do?
Right. So there's that. There's Twitter. People tweet him things, and we know that that's a vector for him too. That he retweets.
It really was
things.
Back in the day, boy.
And I guess the other thing I saw in passing, and I thought I put it aside, and maybe I can't pull it up now. I'll have to see if I can find my a link to establish at least where I heard it from, even if the link doesn't prove it. But there's some considerable danger in this. The word is that though he's been fired and he's gone from the White House, Trump continues to call and consult with the infamous spy Michael Flynn.
Of course he did, but that's been going on for a while.
Yeah. But I was reminded of the fact that it could possibly be happening, and it would exist sort of in the context of the Kelly story where he's, clamping down on who has access and he's going to run a tight ship. Trump, what other president does that? Oh, we had to fire the guy because A, he's a leaker, and B, he's got a kind of a long history of violating.
He's under criminal investigation.
Yeah, right. You can't be seen talking. No one's going to see me. I'm going to hide in the closet and call him. Okay, you can't do that. But he doesn't. At some point,
Mueller's going to subpoena his phone, and there's going to be a big court battle about it.
Yeah, should subpoena the carrier and leave Trump out of it. Sprint.
That's true.
Give me all your records.
But they'll have to notify him.
Yeah.
Particularly, I don't know. But of course, you can also get it from Flynn's phone.
Yeah, that too.
Flynn is an interesting character in all of this because he hasn't. He listens to his lawyers. He hasn't said a word.
Yeah, well, he's not in a
since
position
he left, that I can recall.
Yeah.
I don't think he's spoken a public word. There was a puff piece about him going home to Rhode Island and how everybody loved him. He was, same old friendly
still a spy.
Mike Flynn.
Good old friendly spy, Mike Flynn. Yeah, all right. Well,
and but he wasn't quoted it, so they placed the article to make him look good. But he was smart enough not to be quoted it.
Okay. Well, that's
so
wise.
He's got a good lawyer.
That's
he's
good.
Smart enough to listen to his lawyer.
Yes. Most people are smart enough to listen to their lawyers. Donald Trump just thinks he's above. He literally thinks he's the smartest guy in any room, and that includes his lawyers. And I'm sure they've told him 100 times. And I'm sure really what's operating in his mind. Yeah. Harvard Law School, whatever. First of all, I just had a Harvard Law School guy over here. He was the dumbest guy I ever met. Fired him in a week. Second of all, if you're such a genius, why aren't you the billionaire? That's basically.
Well, let me start with $500 million. Let me see if I can double it.
Well, that doesn't matter to him. Oh, who cares? I was smart. I chose to be born rich. Yeah, that doesn't enter into it. Oh, I only got a small loan of $1 million from my dad, and I turned it into a bazillion. Yeah, there's all kinds of problems with that. He just doesn't believe any of it. He just thinks he can get away with anything. Which I guess one other thing I'll throw in here that has been.
When you're a star, David.
Yes,
when you're a star.
That's exactly it. We have to come back to that. It's his mindset. That's why it's in every story. One of the other things that I guess he thinks he can get away with because he's a star that hasn't gotten a great deal of attention, and which, again, is another thing that suffers from the flood of outrage. Small-ish story. Switching over to emoluments and the kids. As you know, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. got the go-ahead. His whole solution, Trump's whole solution to the conflicts of interest and emoluments problem, wasn't the solution. I'm going to give my business to my kids. Lots of places we can stop along the way there and say, oh, well, actually, it was all assigned to a revocable trust, and he can draw money from it whenever he wants, so it's no separation whatsoever. Not to mention the fact that the idea of handing the business over to Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. being enough distance, it's not. That won't work. But another breach of the firewall here, which everybody's talking about the outrage itself, but not the firewall issue. Lara Trump, his daughter-in-law, has a new job.
Sorry to preemptively laugh.
But Lara Trump's new job is boingboing.net now reporting on this one, which is funny enough. She hosts, presumably, a news show, a quote-unquote news show. It's basically a video series that they embed on the DonaldJTrump.com website and the Trump Facebook page that is aimed at, getting the real news out because of all the fake news that's out there and getting you the real story behind Donald Trump and all of his successes. So it's campaign stuff and propaganda stuff, and it's hosted by Eric's wife, Lara. Great for the firewall, by the way. Eric can have nothing to do with the politics and governance side because he's busy with the business, and he has to keep that separate, and we cannot mingle the two. But in the meantime, his wife is working for the campaign. That doesn't actually work as firewall or separation. Not that any of the rest of it worked, but we're going to ignore this because who cares about Lara Trump? And after all, big deal, so she makes some dumb videos that nobody watches, but it's a serious infraction if you take the conflict of interests and emoluments stories seriously. And why bother taking that seriously if the president is a Russian agent, right? How can you get around? You can't get off that story. How do you pay attention to stuff like this? And I worry that they just think as long as we keep fanning the flames of this other one, since we can't get rid of it, burn the rest of the forest down as cover for looting nearby.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we are overwhelmed at it because I was just thinking to myself, how many days ago was the scoop? I mean, really a huge scoop that Trump wrote the statement to Junior.
Right. Well, also a gigantic violation of the relationship, the separation that they're supposed to have. This guy is, I know he's your son, and he tried to come up with that excuse. Any father would do this for the son. Not really. Nor is anybody in position to do that. And third of all, you're not just any old dad. You're supposed to be taking the care that the laws of the United States are faithfully executed. And it's your business manager that you're really doing this for. And you're covering for his political machinations behind the scenes during the campaign as well. So, yeah, I mean, that story, a tremendous problem. That one at least is not going away yet. I mean, that seems like one with legs. Everybody's upset about the fact that he dictated the statement and then said he had nothing to do with it. And it'll be held against Jay Sekulow for a long time.
So that's not going away because of that.
Right. Lara Trump, I think, will just skate because we don't know what to do with that. Yeah, ordinarily you might investigate
It's just
that.
a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's all those things you say. It's also, to me, it's primarily just weird. Your daughter-in-law is going to be the newscaster for your fake news?
Yeah, I don't know.
What is that?
That's weird for a normal person or politician who is not a normal person. It's normal for Donald Trump, who is like, it's a family business. They do things. They vertically integrate their interests so that there are jobs created for everybody in the family. They do things. They're seen. They're on camera. Whatever. Let's see.
Here's a breaking story that's somewhat interesting.
Yes.
McCabe, the acting FBI director, told several of the highest-ranking managers at the Bureau they should consider themselves possible witnesses in any investigation into whether President Donald Trump engaged in obstruction of justice.
Oh, witnesses. Okay.
Witnesses.
Well, that will be interesting. Okay. Duly noted there. We'll see whether that develops into anything. I guess other things that I have on the radar that rate a quick mention. David Farenthold on the scent of a new story. I guess he stumbled across the story of, I guess, another outrage from Governor LePage up in Maine, that I guess when he travels to D.C., he's making a point, A, of spending lavishly while making that trip, and B, of course, spending state money lavishly at Donald Trump's D.C. hotel. So he's now on a search for other state Republicans who have traveled on state business and made a point of spending state money at Trump properties, which is another emoluments problem. Our same domestic emoluments problem, the one that actually implicates the black and white letter of the emoluments clause, the domestic emoluments clause about state governments making gifts and payments to the president. So, problematic also. Apparently $35,000 on a trip to D.C. spent at Trump properties. And so he's now on a search for more and looking for public records on that.
Yeah, but the other day, just nonchalantly, someone said, "Hey, well, Trump went and took a bunch of people to dinner at the Trump Hotel."
Yes.
Now, this is a little thing.
Yeah.
But he didn't pay for that dinner. The United States government almost certainly paid for that dinner.
Yes.
He just steered government expenditure to his own property.
Right. And by the way, I mean, what does he eat when he goes there? What does he eat when he's in the White House? If you want steak
Delicious
and ketchup,
chocolate cake.
right, eat steak with ketchup and chocolate cake. That's on the menu every night you want it at the White House. You could have had those people to dine at perhaps one of the most exclusive addresses in the world in terms of dining. The White House,
dump.
Too boring. Yeah, it's a dump, right. We forgot to even mention that. He now denies having said that up in, when he was last in Bedminster, apparently. He told all of his, the members of the Bedminster Trump National Golf Club.
Why do you always come here? The White House is a dump.
Yes, he now denies it.
So is Camp David, by the way.
Yes, that's true. He does say that. And Camp David is closer to being a dump than the White House is. But, it's an ancient building and everything. But yeah, it's supposed to be.
It a little bit.
Right. Insofar as the president ever roughs it, I'm sure that's the case. But yeah, so he was down on that. It's a dump. By the way, he's now set to head out on a 17-day stay at Bedminster for a golf vacation, I guess, beginning
Can you believe that?
This week or later this week or next week. Yeah, well, what I can't believe is ABC News, clickbait perhaps, reporting it as his first vacation since inauguration. Which I guess in a sense it is. It's an extended stays and everything. But how do you even get to the point where you say he's going on vacation for the first time? Really? Wow, where's he going? Oh, same place he goes every weekend. Oh, well then how could it be the first? That is a good question. I have to leave now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was a lie.
That I steered Joan away from coming on.
Possibly. I don't think you scared her away, but she maybe is entertained by your routine. That could be it. Joan, please join us, if you will.
I promise to be quiet. But 17 days.
Yes. I don't know if anybody...
And by the way, not even Trump Tower, where he lives, is going to a golf resort?
Yes, well, his place. His Bedminster, he's got a cottage.
White House, he'll call it when he tweets.
Yeah, he does do that. He does do that. He's got what's described as a cottage. I don't know what a Trump cottage looks like.
Oh, I'm sure it's nice. And, spacey and all those things.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Joan says, not scared. She has to authenticate Skype. Everybody had to update their Skype recently, I guess, and now you have to go. You can't just turn it on and use it anymore. You can once you do this.
I meant scared away in the sense that she's good. I don't have to go on or something.
No,
Joan isn't scared of anybody, least of all me.
That would be surprising. She's probably, well, she says she was struggling with authenticating Skype, and I can sympathize with that. And probably, was having a good time listening. She's a listener, too. You're entitled to a 17-day vacation from coming on the show. You can listen. I don't know what Trump is vacationing from. The fact that he's he loves golf. Great, fine. Do whatever you want. The fact that he's choosing to go to a 17-day vacation of more golf at actually literally the same place he's been going. How do you even justify the headline, first vacation? That's crazy. Here's Joan.
I think after that 17.
Oops! Oh, I seem to have lost Armando in adding you there. But Joan, it's your turn, nonetheless. Let's see.
Armando.
Is he on hold? Is that what happened here? Let's see if I can add him to it. Okay. Okay. Well, let's go back. Armando, you can call in and join us again. How about that? If you want to have a little conversation with Joan, because I've been dying to have a conversation with Joan.
Absolutely. We can all talk. It's fun.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? This is interesting. I wonder if I have to add him in order to because for some reason, the new Skype, the fabulous new Skype, did you have to authenticate it because you had to reinstall a new update? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay. I think so. The new Skype is disappointing a lot of people, I think. And,
that's what happened yesterday?
No.
Skype? Or?
No, I don't think so. Although I think the new Skype makes it difficult to coordinate with my new audio apps, which also had to be updated. And I think I have to get the settings just right, and you have to start the apps in a specific order. So let's see. I wonder. Oh, say he's trying to call again. I want to try and patch him in. Let's begin with your segment, though, because we've been going on for a long time. I'll send him a note and see if we can't work it out. I'm sure he would like the chance to talk to you as well. But we missed you yesterday, or I got to talk over you for about 10 seconds.
I'm not sure that we ended up talking over each other.
Oh, okay.
I think we left awkward silences instead.
Oh, okay. Well, that's also bad.
Yeah. I just wanted to follow up on the humiliating day for Donald Trump.
Okay.
I just retweeted Andrew Kaczynski has some tweets from Medvedev. Republican.
Yeah, you're right.
President.
It's an R word.
That are really kind of terrifying. I mean, it's showing what Russia is trying to do with Trump in office.
All right.
He starts out, the U.S. establishment fully outwitted Trump. The president is not happy about the sanctions, yet he could not but sign the bill. Then he goes on, the Trump administration has shown its total weakness by handing over executive power to Congress in the most humiliating way. Ending the U.S. president's signing of the package of new Russian sanctions and hopes for improving our relations. They weren't trying to get a mole into the White House. They were trying to get a clown into the White House.
I guess so.
So that they can humiliate the United States.
Yeah, and finally and last. Wow. Well, it seems to have worked pretty well. That's an astonishing combination of comments.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Trump's on its own is worth parsing, but it's not the more interesting side of the story. I mean, it's weird that he feels like there was nothing he could do here, and I mean there might not have been, and people have said it was passed with a veto-proof majority, etc. But presidents can sway things, but nobody believes this guy, so they're not gonna perhaps be persuaded by him. But that alongside him admitting that it makes him look like he has no control, and Russian officials, although I guess he doesn't hold an official position now, or does he? I don't know.
Medvedev's president again, isn't he?
Is he? I don't even know. That's a good. What? No, I don't know. Did that happen?
Yeah.
What?
Or is
I don't know.
He and Putin have swapped.
Again?
He's currently prime minister.
Okay. So, all right, there's, the Russian prime minister you don't hear
now
about.
he's prime minister, and Putin is president.
Yeah, I mean,
they switched between the president and the prime minister position.
It does not.
Medvedev is, certainly Putin's tool.
Yeah, that's obvious enough, and I wasn't certain whether he was occupying a important official position at the moment or not. Because really, who counts besides Putin? Really, nobody. I mean, he gets to decide who's. You can listen to this man for now, and he makes all the calls, as I understand the way. But who knows how much I understand about Russia? But still, to say this one about it's something Russians have said about American presidents for a long time. They just try to portray them as weak, but I don't think they've ever tried to. Control them to this extent, or portray them as having.
Has shown its total weakness by handing over executive power to Congress in the most humiliating way.
Yes, and it's it's Cold War language. They frequently used to say that. They just never had any basis in reality.
Right.
That's what it is, I think. All right,
and it's egging Trump on. I think.
Yes.
It's let's push Trump's buttons, and using very careful language to know that they're pushing Trump's buttons.
All right.
Anyway, that was the most disturbing part of Trump's humiliating morning to me.
Okay. Well, I'll take it as and it's a good follow up to yesterday's humiliation, which he doesn't acknowledge, in which everybody found out he's basically still doing the John Barron act. People are calling me and telling me I'm great. And we know who those people are. By the way, who's leaking? Is Trump leaking this stuff to us? Is that what this is? The president of Mexico called me. That's a leak, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not classified information. And,
well, maybe it's not a leak if it didn't really happen.
I guess that's true. An attempted leak.
But, and then to have the actual phone transcripts follow the next day.
Oh, yeah, even worse. Did you happen to see the graphic on the Washington Post page that they used to illustrate this thing? I was starting to read them out loud thinking it would be interesting, but I cracked up and couldn't finish. I guess when I got to, I don't even remember which one it was, I'm a dope, or this makes me look like I can't remember which one it was oh yeah, right, it makes me look bad and I've only been here a week. I'm glad that he
didn't have a happy time with Mr. Turnbull.
No, either of them, and I don't know which one this is even about, because both of them were making him look terrible. One in refusing to pay for the wall, and the other they argued over refugees and resettlement issues.
Yes.
So I'm not even sure which one. Or maybe this is even from two different conversations, but the whole thing is astonishing. Plus, it's also astonishing how much of it is, I look bad. I don't want to look bad.
Right. And you're going to make me look like a dope. I look like an idiot.
Right. Well, that's all true.
It is all true.
Right. So maybe this is the point where he's being honest. Here we are. He's being honest about his lying. I'm told Joe Walsh said. I'll have to find that one. But, I don't know, a million other things going on, and might as well focus on these things. But I know I also put aside a piece of yours from the last day or two. Let's see about one, zombie treason care and where we stand on that. And
yes, we didn't have a chance to celebrate that last week. Because we were very tired.
Yes, I know, and it knocked us out.
We were too tired to celebrate because we were up all night with the Senate.
Right.
But did you watch?
I didn't. You know what? I watched by watching people watch on Twitter right almost until the last minute, until finally there was so much complaining going on. I was upstairs. I should have had the lights out. What are you doing? What are you watching? What's so important? Well, they're about to cast the vote on this thing. Although my wife convinced me, you're waiting to see how McCain votes. What are you, crazy? Just turn it off.
I was in the same boat for
Yeah.
the entire night until
Right.
we got to Murray's motion to recommit.
Mm-hmm.
And all the votes were in, and they didn't gavel it.
Yeah.
And didn't gavel it. And didn't gavel it.
So it was a hell of a night.
That's the point where it got extremely exciting. It never fails to amaze me how nothing happening on the Senate floor can be so dramatic and fraught.
Yeah. It was an amazing night, and then it was, of course, a couple of days of trying to unravel procedure for everybody. It was immediately followed by wild internet rumors that McCain had, in fact, engineered a tremendous coup, finishing the bill once and for all, which wasn't true.
Which wasn't true. It would have been nice had it been true, but
it sounded
it's still
truthful.
there. It's still on the calendar.
Yes, and that was the big thing that people missed, because I guess if you wait for the vote and then McCain casts the vote and everybody, shouts one way or the other, however you wanted it to come out, you're shouting based on what McCain does, and nobody sticks around for the mop-up act, which is McConnell moving to put this thing back on the calendar with no objection, by the way, but they would have had a vote and lost it, Democrats, had they objected, although that would be a great way to twist the knife. You're going to stay here until 3 a.m. doing this.
We need a younger conference.
Yeah, that's basically it. If I had been there and objected because I thought that was an interesting idea to do, Schumer, I'm sure, would have been like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?
Just let us go home."
Yeah, the substance of the day is one. What are you doing? Stretching this out until 3 a.m. Well, they're old too. I want to hurt them.
Painful.
Yeah.
You want to make it painful.
Right. But not necessary. But we finally did unwind that mystery about where it stands. But you wrote recently, Trump is not going to let Trump Care go. And what the hell's going on over there? What are they really planning? We outlined some of the options, but just a few days ago, the position was... just a few days ago they announced, official White House policy is nothing gets done until the Obamacare repeal gets done, and of course that's not the way things work. Mick
Mulvaney comes out with his maniac statement.
Yeah.
Because he is, never forget where Mick Mulvaney started, where he came from.
Right.
The House Freedom Caucus. The Senate decided that they could certainly ignore Mick Mulvaney and proceeded on with their nominations and whatever else they were doing. The House, of course, fine by them. They were out of town.
Yeah. It's
so that's being ignored.
Yeah. As it should be, because, you don't set our agenda. What's wrong with you? But
right.
In addition to not wanting to let it go, of course, nothing will get done until then. And I think at some point they actually floated the idea of, well, how do you enforce something like that? Well, we could threaten to veto everything else that comes out of Congress until you send us the Obamacare repeal to sign, which didn't get a lot of discussion because that's bananas.
And it's his nominations.
But yeah,
his nominations.
Another problem. Then, of course, there was the pronouncement from Trump before the failure of the vote. He had floated a couple days before, nobody leaves Washington until it's done. And now he's like, I'm going on vacation for 17 days to the same place I always go.
Well, and the House is already gone.
Yeah, okay.
The Senate is doing its darndest to get out today.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, we knew that they would be certainly trying to leave. So that whole thing fell apart. But okay, so another stupid promise from Trump falls apart, added to the list. But at least we know, well, okay, if that one first falls apart, then the nothing else until Obamacare is repealed can probably fall apart. And they've sent every subtle signal they can from the Senate, right, that that's the case.
I don't know how subtle just totally ignoring him is.
Oh, well, it's quiet.
It is quiet. But they're just continuing on as if he didn't exist, except for Lindsey Graham, Dean Heller, and Bill Cassidy.
Right. Oh, yes, that's true.
who have met with Trump to say, okay, we've got a new idea. We're just going to block grant the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think that at this point there is any desire in the Senate anymore to touch this, really.
Yeah,
except for Lamar Alexander having regular order.
Yes.
Actually promising hearings in September, early September, with Patty Murray on how to stabilize the markets, which is pretty amazing. And I think it's a rebuke both to Trump and to McConnell to immediately turn to, okay, we're going to do this the right way. We are going to have hearings.
Yeah. Well, if anything was to come out of those hearings, this would be, under regular order, this would be this would be a fairly long process. It's not something that's likely to be rushed, even if the option in the end is to try to do the block grant thing.
We'll see. I think part of it's going to depend on what the Trump administration actually does with cost-saving reduction payments. If he says, no, I am not paying them, that could make the Senate hurry up.
That's a good
because
point.
There seems to be consensus now among the not crazy Republicans, the not Ted Cruz's and Rand Paul's and Mike Lee's, that, we've got to do something here. We can't let this entirely fall apart. And you had Lamar Alexander calling on Trump to promise that he would start making these payments and continue to make these payments.
And that brings us to I have another of their stories here, helpfully illustrated by another ridiculous picture of Trump looking like a mess. But I hate to be so superficial, but you find great pictures here. But
it turns out they share really well, which is kind of sad. Everybody likes to look at Trump looking like an idiot.
Yes. Well, this one is particularly idiotic, I think, but it accompanies the story about the title, Remember the Dumb Lawsuit Over Obamacare Payments, and it's a big problem for Trump. This is, I guess, a link to related story that we could put in there. Not only, of course, the issue of the threats against various payments to keep the Obamacare system rolling, but I guess some standing issues resolved for parties interested in suing to guarantee that they go forward.
Right. It's essentially the state's attorneys general stepping in and saying the White House isn't going to defend this. Somebody has to let it be us. And the Court of Appeals has said, okay, the states can defend this. Because the White House clearly is not going to.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll abolish that court. Probably pretty soon. It's the which court is it? Did you mention?
It's the D.C. Court of Appeals.
Okay.
It's the big one.
No joke there.
It's the big one. Yeah.
Okay.
We've still got this case hanging out there in limbo. Because they were waiting to see what was going to happen with repeal. And it's still a little bit in limbo, but could be moving forward now. And this could be a hint that it would be decided against now, which is strange. The House of Representatives and the Trump administration. The Trump administration took over the case from the Obama administration. Decided they would just not do anything about it for the time being, waiting to see what happened on the repeal vote.
Yeah. And
it's instructive to go back to the very beginning, how all of this started with Boehner trying to stave off an impeachment move from his crazies over Obama's immigration executive actions.
Okay.
Remember back then we had Sarah Palin going crazy about impeaching and frothing up the House Freedom Caucus about impeachment over immigration?
But it registers.
Boehner tried to distract them by saying, we'll sue over Obamacare actions.
So that's the origin.
Started.
Okay.
And
wow.
back then we all thought
Whoops.
this is a garbage suit. It took him 3 tries to find an attorney who would actually represent them, and it ended up being Jonathan Turley. Surprise, surprise.
Okay.
And everybody thought, no, the courts are not going to intervene in a dispute between the other 2 branches. That could be solved easily just by rewriting the statute. There's a legislative fix here that's obvious and easy. In a normal world, that's what would have happened. But they got a George W. Bush appointee, Collier, is that her name?
I don't know. Now that
Rosemary.
Yeah, that rings a bell, certainly, in combination.
Yeah. Who said, well, yeah, sure. I mean, what's your other remedy here? Actually, she said this in the hearing. Impeachment?
Okay.
Crazy hearing. She ruled for the House and immediately stayed the ruling, knowing it was going to be appealed. And that's where we've held now. For months and months and months and months.
These convoluted ways we get to these places. Well,
meanwhile, insurance companies are saying, look, we gotta have this money. If we don't have this money, we're gonna have to pay for it by raising everybody's premiums. And by the way, it is your fault, Republicans. It is your fault, Donald Trump, that we're having to raise premiums. And it seems like people are actually hearing that.
They're figuring out why. Not just how much it'll cost. Okay, well, that's super important.
I mean, you even had the insurance commissioner in Idaho saying this is the administration's fault when he announced
noticed. Idaho
38% average premium increases.
It's astounding to me. I take for granted that people aren't going to notice where the cost hikes, if they come through, are coming from and why they're happening. But I guess it's actually working this time. One of the downsides for the Trump guys of having everybody focused on healthcare for so long is I guess they catch up on these things.
Yeah.
So,
seems to have. So, and right now, this was a fun little thing that just popped up. People like Jeff Flake and Dean Heller are hurting in the polls.
Yes.
Heller has a 22% approval rating. One just came out where Jeff Flake has a 17% approval rating.
Oh, well. It's so hard to care about him, but
it is so hard to care.
And of course, I worry that it means, well, in Arizona, what does that really mean? Does that really mean replacing him with a Democrat, or does that really mean a Democrat facing off against a right-wing Republican crazy who unseats him in a primary who nobody believes can win, but now we're all biting our fingernails because Donald Trump? Or what?
That, or what? Any of those scenarios. We don't have a great challenger yet who's stepped to the fore in Arizona, so we'll see in terms of a Democrat.
Yeah, that's not an easy place to find people. Okay.
There could be a great one there that we haven't identified yet, that, hasn't been at it long enough. I am not sure. I've got to explore that. But so far it doesn't look like Arizona's.
It seems like a dry place for that.
Yes.
No pun intended. It's a dry heat there, so. But a Democratic bench in Arizona, I mean, there are Democrats, obviously, and lots of them. Hello, Democrats of Arizona. Are any of you fantastic? Please step forward.
Are you going to step up and challenge Jeff Flake? Please do.
It would be great. I know it's a hard thing to think about, but a 17% approval rating, now's the time.
Now's the time.
I say that like it's easy, but.
And, you heard all about John McCain and Susan Collins at the airports having people run up to them and thank them and hug them.
I did hear a bit about that. And people putting out signs.
So even in Arizona, I think.
Yeah.
McCain's action is being lauded. Flake's looked at askance.
Good. Well, that would be great. And, maybe some newly emboldened resistance members who may not have otherwise involved themselves in politics, but who may have, let's say, have a business background or whatever. People seem to love that for whatever reason. Not that I recommend it's a great reason, but in Arizona it might work.
Necessarily this cycle.
Yeah, well, okay. Maybe it's, right. Who knows? Maybe it's a nice business that everybody likes. Yes. But anyway, I'm certain there's some openings.
Parlor.
Yeah, right. How could you go wrong with that?
That would be perfect.
Sure.
If you had a mom and pop ice cream shop.
Yes, where you paid people and gave them sick leave.
Yes.
Do we have any of that? I don't know. Arizona ice cream shop with sick leave. We might not find any.
I wouldn't hold my breath. No.
But okay. Right. All right. Well, so it's an exciting opportunity there, perhaps to capitalize on some self-immolation there. Although I imagine Flake will, I guess that's why he's flacking the book and his op-ed so hard to try and rehabilitate his image and distance himself from Trump and Trumpism as best he can, minus the voting.
You know, good luck. You took that vote with no qualms whatsoever to repeal Obamacare with nothing in place to replace it.
Yes.
And hurt also because Arizona is a Medicaid expansion state, one of the few red states that took the Medicaid expansion.
Yes. That too.
Yeah.
So
more than 200,000 people would have lost their health care immediately, thanks to Jeff Flake.
The rush at the end with all the votes that had you so busy, I don't know if it gave us, did we ever have an opportunity even just to comment for a minute on the sheer insanity that engulfed the Senate Republican conference at the time of, don't worry about what's in this. It could be a blank sheet of paper. Just vote yes so that we can fix it in conference later on.
So remember how the House passed it?
Yes.
By saying the Senate's going to fix it.
Yeah, don't worry. The Senate's going to change it anyway. They'll have to because the Byrd rule, and it'll all be different. And then the Senate gets, don't worry, the House will fix it again when we meet in conference.
And besides that, the thing that got Ron Johnson so upset, even if we pass this one, a future Congress is going to fix it. A future Congress isn't going to let this happen.
That's a restatement of, I think, the way I heard that it was put, but that's an even finer point on it. As I recall, his complaint was, say most of the Medicaid cuts are backloaded so heavily that they'll never come to pass because once we see them looming on the horizon in 6 to 8 years, we'll just put the brakes on it. But that's cutting it down to its essence.
And Cornyn were selling it.
Yeah.
You can do these Medicaid cuts now because they aren't really going to happen.
And that should be obvious, but you really pared it down to its essence. That it's a great follow-up to, don't worry, the Senate will fix it. Don't worry, the House will fix it. Don't worry, another Congress in the future will fix it. Wow.
The buck never stops in the Republican Party.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of struck by the whole somebody else will fix it, or we're going to put ourselves in a situation where, oh, come on, nobody wants this, so therefore we'll obviously find a solution. That brought me back to the super committee and sequestration, but that was more obscure reference. I think the way you put it here is perfect. They'll fix it. No, they'll fix it. No, future us will fix it. Shoo! That's really crazy. How could you possibly depend on that? I don't know. Weird.
Luckily, 3 of them couldn't.
Yeah.
And it was a close thing. I have never been happier to be wrong about John McCain.
Yes.
But after his complaining, sure, I'll vote to proceed to this horrible piece of language.
Yeah.
Then, it was John McCain posturing clear up until the end. And we've seen so much of John McCain posturing and folding that I just couldn't believe it was for real this time.
Yeah. Well, we haven't taken a look back on it now that it's been debunked, the idea that voting for the motion to proceed and then voting against all of the amendments was a brilliant move to take the bill off the table. Now that we know that that's not true, has anybody revisited, why did you vote for the motion to proceed with him?
No.
Yeah.
He and I don't know that anybody's had the opportunity. He left town to go.
Right. You can't really badger him now.
No, he's in the middle of getting treatment for his brain cancer, so.
So we'll just leave the question hanging out there. And the answer is he hadn't made up his mind. He's such a hero, he hadn't made up his mind yet what exactly he was going to do. And then, I don't know, he soured over the next couple of days. That's fine. It's great. Some credit for actually casting the vote.
But it sure would have saved a lot of angst and late nights had he just, from the get-go said no.
Yeah, this is a dumb plan. You can't come to, you're asking me to go to the floor with literally nothing written down. We don't do that. And then his speech, we got to have regular order. Here it is. Say no now. Well, I'll say no later. Well, you could have put a finer point on your speech.
After he voted to do this thing.
So
to completely break the Senate norms and traditions.
Yes.
To do something so ridiculous as to go to the floor with a blank piece of paper.
There
and
is
think
that.
In 12 hours we're going to have a bill.
Yeah, I would have wished that he might have resolved that then and there. But okay, we'll take the results. But
See, I'm still not over my being bitter at John McCain.
That's
clearly,
fine.
Even though he saved us.
You're procedurally sound in your objection, I think. One last thing I'll just add, just as we close things up, we won't have much time to talk about it. But signing statements are back.
Yes, they are.
They never left, but so is this perhaps Trump's first one? I wondered whether they were exploring the possibility of issuing a signing statement without actually signing the bill, as it looked like they might do for a while.
It was his first one, and it was wackadoodle.
Yeah, and there are two. There's one that he actually uttered aloud, I guess, or issued on his own, and then there's the official one written by lawyers, which is the one that counts.
Official one is not quite so wackadoodle.
Not as bad. But
it doesn't proclaim his great acumen as a businessman and negotiator.
Right. And the fact that the second statement, which won't be counted as a signing statement, but the second statement being issued when they were already issuing something official, I think you should add to your footnotes about the total control that John Kelly is imposing on messaging at the White House. Can't stop the president from saying stuff. Especially
or tweeting.
This one. Right. So he just goes and does it. But signing statements back in the news, we'll keep an eye on that and everything else that goes on. But luckily, we're actually heading into the recess. Oh, one more question. Are they going to have their pro forma sessions over the August recess?
I believe that they are. They haven't made a lot of noise about it. Democrats have insisted on it. I think that probably Republicans were going to do it anyway because they are very unhappy with the way their friend Jeff Sessions has been treated. And they want to make sure that Trump can't just put somebody else in now.
Right. Yeah, okay. So there are Republicans worried about it too. Of course, Democrats can object to the consideration of a adjournment resolution, I think in the absence of which they kind of have to do the pro forma thing. But I think we're up to date on that, and then a quiet period ensues for you,
Thank
I
goodness.
hope. Yeah, are you taking any vacation?
I'm going to Atlanta next week.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, that counts sort of, although it's a bit of a working vacation, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So
I'll see all you folks at Netroots Nation.
Very good. Okay, we'll catch up again. Thanks for coming by for our Make a Good session. I'm sorry about yesterday. Glad to hear from you, though.
No problem.
All right. Have a good time if I don't catch up with you before you make your trip to Atlanta, and we'll see what that does to our scheduling next week. Thanks, Joan.
Well, we're going to have to play it by ear.
Yeah, by a long shot. Okay. Take care. Enjoy yourself. Have a great trip if we don't speak to you. Thanks again for coming by.
You're most welcome.
Joan McCarter, our senior political writer at Daily Kos, making good on my mistakes yesterday. Now time to hand things over to the guys on the after show. We'll see what I can squeeze in by way of summary of what's coming up next. But you should keep your radio, fake radio, tuned here to the real news on Netroots Radio all day long.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, there's all kinds of news coming up, including the latest on the unmasking pseudo-scandal and Devin Nunes. We'll be hearing more about that. And on the last half of today's after show, the report on the passage of a new Jim Crow bill. Find out all about where that's happening and how on the after show next.